Welcome to Obsidian for tabletop RPGs. Let's learn how to use the tool. Alright, g'day guys and welcome back today to another Obsidian video. Today we're going to be diving into the third video in the CLI series. Alright, if you haven't watched my first two videos on the CLI process, please go back and watch those before you dive into this, because this video is going to make absolutely no sense to you whatsoever. Alright, today though we're going to be diving into configuration files, how to create them and what they do. So, let's start quickly with what is a configuration file to the CLI tool. Basically, it's a text file. All right, it's a text file with a bunch of settings that you predetermine, right? So you go through and you say, I want these sources to be included in the CLI process. I want these books. I want these adventures. I want you to export my CLI notes into this folder structure, and I want you to use these templates. It's really quite handy. And you know, in my last video, I showed you how to add sources into your CLI command. I don't do that, right? I just have it set up so that it looks at my config file. And when I run it, it updates from the config file. So if I want to add new sources, I add them via the config file, all right? Once you move to a config file, there's basically no going back. Like, you'll realize it's a much more efficient way of using the tool. It can take a little bit of setting up, but there's some fantastic examples. So without any further ado, let's jump in and have a look. Okay, so I'm sitting down to run my CLI command again. We're obviously going to look at config files, but the first thing I actually always do when I sit down and run the CLI command again is actually check to see if there's been an update to it. So first thing we're going to do is come over here to Google and type in Obsidian TTRPG CLI, and Google will bring up the responses. Oh, my videos are starting to pop up too, which is fantastic. But we can see here Ubulliant's TTRPG Convert CLI. Here's one I prepared earlier. This is the GitHub site where this CLI tool is obviously kept and maintained. We went through in the first video how to install this, so make sure you go through and watch that. I'll just call out that there is a link here to buy Ubulliant a coffee. All right, can I just, loudly say support the developers who are supporting us, right? And this tool is absolutely worthy of a coffee or two. All right, but over here on the right, all right, so we scroll down a little bit and you can see the latest release. We're going to click into there and we'll be able to see what's going on. All right, so you can see some improvements have been made. Now, in the last video, we went through the whole concept of don't move the CLI notes. This is why, guys, there's been an update made to the CLI tool that adds some new cool things, right? It handles the data in a better way. It might format things. It might add things that we didn't have before. So by making sure that we kept everything in the CLI folder originally, we can now run this update without doing too much damage to the work that we've done. All right, so we're going to come here to the release. We can see the changes that have been made. We can come down and we can grab the version that we need. Again, I'm running on Windows, and this process is very different if you're running on a Windows or a Linux machine. You will need to dive into the readmes on how to figure that out, because I don't understand it. All right, here we have the file that we need though. All right, so it's the latest version. I'm going to download that. That's going to come through. All right, so first we're going to, well, it's just been flagged for malicious behavior. That's okay. I'm going to download this one here. All right, so this is the folder that contains the templates. No, it's not. Sorry, this is the actual TTRPG CLI. So that's fine. I'm just going to stick that on the other window quickly, and I'm going to open up another one. I keep my CLI stored on my C drive, which is here. All right, so we're going to come in here. We've got the bin folder. Now, I've also got the bin folder in this new folder that I've just downloaded. So I'm going to drag my TTRPG convert.exe over into that folder. We're going to do the same quickly for PF2E tools. All right, and just basically update the CLI process. All right, that is done. I can shut that one down now. Go back to here. I'm now going to get the folder that I downloaded. All right, so this folder here contains the templates that we're going to use. So here under examples, you can see templates. All right, we're going to be going through some of those today. Also, it's got the CSS snippets that we've discussed previously as well. So you're obviously going to need we need this folder. So let's drag that over here quickly. I'm going to come back to my folder, my bin folder, where I have the TTRPG-convert-CLI-main. I'm going to drag this in. It's going to replace everything. And that's just going to get us the latest templates in case they've changed. All right. Now, I probably could have gone in here and actually checked to see if the examples have changed. All right, we can see there's been an update to the templates 2 days ago. So yeah, this is absolutely worth doing. So there's some new things in here for us to play around with. All right, replace or skip files. We're going to replace the files in the destination. Now, keep in mind that I'm doing this, right? We're going to dive in today to a little bit of like how to use templates. And part of that I've played with is how to create my own templates. It's for that reason that I don't ever actually sort of like edit the existing or the original files. I create a copy with my name at the back and then I edit those. All right. And this is why, because I want to basically be able to do this. I want to be able to update everything so that I'm getting the latest and greatest. I'm going to do the same in here, just with my 5e tools version. All right. So go ahead, download the site. All right. Update your CLI process and get ready to obviously dive into config files, because this is sort of like the foundation for us. Again, if you haven't watched the first video, go back, please. You'll be so confused by now. All right, done. So we have updated the CLI tool. All right, so now we're going to dive into how to create a config file. Okay, config files. We've gone through what they are. All right, but let's just quickly show you one. So we're going to jump in here to DM sources-basic. I'll bring that over to here. This is a config file. All right, now let's just break this down and step through it so we can understand what it is and what it's doing. The from section is basically sources. All right, in our last video we went through how to add the -s and the sources. This replaces that. All right, so you don't need to add the -s in once you do this. You can just list your sources here, and all you do if you want to add a new source is just press enter, type the source name, do a comma, enter, source name 2, comma, enter. Right, now the last one, notice, doesn't have the comma. All right, this is important. The tool will fail if you have an additional comma here. All right, so if you do that, the tool will not run. The last option in a section that looks like this, all right, so between the square brackets, must be lacking that comma at the end, all right, and that's just how the structure of this data works. All right, so if we understand what we're doing here, I am bringing in the DMG, the player handbook, and the monster manual. All right, these are all books that I own, and I must give a warning before we dive too deeply into this video. Please only use this to get books that you own. All right, support the developers that we are obviously playing the games for. Go purchase your content. All right, this is just a way to mechanically get that data in very, very quickly and efficiently so that you don't have to hand type this into Obsidian or copy and paste from PDFs or whatever. Like, there's lots and lots of slow ways to do this. This is a very efficient way to do it, but please only use the content that you own and support developers. All right, with that said, let's jump into the next section, paths. One of the first complaints I had about the CLI tool was where everything was put. All right, if we go back, I don't even know if I actually have an example, to be honest, because I've changed it so long ago. But originally it goes into a mechanics folder and a rules folder from memory. And I don't like that. All right, if I'm completely frank, like it just didn't gel with me where they were. So this section here can be added to a config file, to give you access to control where those folders go. Now, you only have access to control 2 folders currently. All right, there's the mechanics folder and the CLI folder, and you can basically redesign where they go. All right, so you go through and you say from the root of my vault, all right, that starts here. This is my first folder within my vault. This is my second folder. This is where the notes will end up. All right, if we go into Obsidian, have a quick look. All right, so we got 2E there. going to put these side by side. All right, so we've got 2-mechanics, that's that folder there. CLI, you can see that I've actually used the folder notes plugin to put a padlock on my CLI folder. That's just to prompt me to say, Josh, do not modify these files manually. All right, we'll expand that out and then bring this back up so we can see. All right, so we've got the CLI folder. So all of the subfolders that the CLI create, I put in here. All right, and if we see here, 2-mechanics, CLI-rules, they're going into here. All right, so basically you can control what folder they go into. And what you want to do is pre-design your vault on where you want them to go. So for me, I have a mechanics folder. So I made a mechanics folder. Then I wanted to put them in a folder that I knew I wasn't going to touch, so I put them in the CLI folder. And then obviously the rules go in the rules that they're in folder within that structure. So you can move them however you like, right? You can set these 2 folder paths up in your command. They will still create into your output, right? So when you run them from the actual CLI tool, they'll be created in the DM folder or whatever you call it. And then in there, 2-mechanics, CLI, right? And then what I've done is I've done it this way so that I can copy and paste these directly into my vault. Not directly into my vault, right? Like I come in here, I go show in System Explorer. All right, I have my CLI folder, and I can now dump the files into this folder, replacing everything that exists and basically override them. So that works really well. All right, so that is paths. All right, next, templates. If you don't like the way the notes look, all right, or you want some form of control over how those notes look, a template is effectively your way of doing that. Use Dice Roller, as it sounds. Are you using Dice Roller, yes or no? I'm not. All right, I roll real dice. I prefer that. And I think Dice Roller for me right now is having a few problems with how it displays some of the data or some of the dice, and it makes it harder for me to know what manual dice to roll. So it's doing too much of a good job. So for me, I've turned that off. Tag prefix, I just literally left that in from the original template. All right, haven't changed it. Down here though, this is where people will start to get interesting. Full source. Full source is a little bit different from the from section. The from section creates a note per thing. All right, so it creates a note per monster, a note per spell. Full source creates the books effectively. All right, so you get the pages of the player handbook, the pages of the monster manual. All right, and same with adventure. If you want the adventures, like the Lost Mines of Foundelver here, which I think you can still get for free on D&D Beyond, by the way, you can add it in here and you'll get a copy of the Lost Mines of Foundelver. Ready to rock and roll. Not completely ready to use, if I'm honest. Like, you still need to add encounters and things like that, but pretty damn close. So that's the structure of it. All right, and we're going to be going through how to create one, where do you put it, all of that sort of loveliness. All right, let's jump in. Okay, so where does your config file go? All right, well, it goes in your bin folder, okay? And what is a file? It's effectively just a text note. All right, so to create one, the first thing you do is go new and find text file or text document. Call it whatever you want. I've called mine DM-sources because I think the original had it called that, -example, and then we change the .txt at the end to .json. All right, it has to be a JSON file. That's going to change it, and it's going to change it so that it opens in whatever application you have set up to open JSON files. I have mine set up to open in Notepad++. All right, so if you don't have Notepad++, I recommend it as a great text editor for code. It's free, and you can go and download that. All right, so if we open this up, we obviously have a blank slate. Where do we go to find out what to type? All right, and ideally we just want to copy and paste that in. The easiest answer for that is to actually come back here, all right, to the actual website. And if we go back to the top level and we go back down here through the README and have a good sort of understanding and look, we'll go through and go recommended plugins, optional CSS snippets, using the tool, the 5e tools JSON data. All right, so here we go. Contains configuration parameters shown in detail below. So here we go. This is an actual source file. If we click this link, we can see we've got an option here for an example. So we can copy that code, all right, under using a configuration file. We can copy that code, head back here and paste that in, all right, save it. That is effectively our first config file. It's quite clear. We can see here the sources and we can see the paths have been included. So we can start to modify that. Now, sources, what are they? Where do we get them from? They're actually contained back here, all right, in your bin folder. You got your 5e tools, -mirror, -1. We can actually come in here. We come into the data folder and we can see a list of everything, all right? And generally the way this works is like the bestiary is in the bestiary folder. The books are in the books folder. Sorry, dog's having a go. All right, now ideally what we can do is find a book that we're interested in. In this case here, we're interested in the monster manual. All right, so we'll open up the monster manual. And what we're looking for is this bit of information here, all right, the source. So source is MM, that's the bit that we want. All right, so we can copy that, we can come back over here and we can add that in here. But just for the purposes of finding one that we don't have, let's have a look. Riser Tiamat. All right, we can come in here, we can grab Riser Tiamat as the ROT. We can come over here to our config file, just do an enter. All right, semicolon, quotation marks, ROT, quotation marks, comma. All right, we can add that in and that will now include the monsters for ROT in our content. All right. So you can go through and you can do that, and this, anything up here will, you know, it's the items, it's the traps, it's the monsters, it's the spells, it's the things. All right, so feel free to go through and add those there. All right, then we go into paths, which comes from the basic example as well. All right, so here you can see it goes into Z compendium or Z compendium -rules. You can change that, right? So this is where I come in and I go to-mechanics. And I must admit, guys, like I'm using to-mechanics instead of to.mechanics. Some people might have seen that I've changed this if you're paying close attention. I found that the linking breaks when you use a period, right? So a full stop instead of the dash. So this works with linking a lot better than this. I found this didn't work at all. So therefore I've actually renamed my folder inside of my Obsidian Vault in order to adhere to this new concept, and I'm using that everywhere instead. It just works better. I've had less trouble with data view since doing it as well because there's no space in there. So, you know, just highly recommend using number dash, whatever. All right, so then we go mechanics, and you know, as you guys know, I want to have mine in my CLI folder. So I'll do this. I'll do CLI. All right, and then this way I've now set where I want things to go. I can save this, okay, and now I'm ready to use it. Now, in the last video, we spoke through to where to store your CLI command. Some of you might remember that I put mine in my CLI folder, in a folder called CLI command. I have a very big one, so don't be scared, all right, but I can grab this. Actually, I'm going to edit it. I'm going to take out the bit that doesn't matter to this video. I'm using a lot of homebrew, so don't worry about mine. All right, this though is the command that we would need to run. All right, so let's break this command down. We've done this before, but we're running the executable. We're creating index files. We're outputting to the DM folder, and here is the change we need to make. We're putting in a -c, which means I want to define a configuration file. And then we're writing the name of the configuration file. All right, so if we go back to our CLI folder, we have a look in our bin and we've created our example JSON file, all right, our config file. Note that it's in the bin folder. This is important, keeping in mind that we run the CLI command tool from the bin folder, all right? And what that effectively means is that we don't need to define exactly where it is. We just define the name of it, all right? So here we need to make sure that the name is the same. So we can go copy that name. I just pressed F2 and copy. Come in here and we can replace this name with the new one. All right, that's it. Config file is now defined, and here we have the 5e tools data. It's telling the tool where to get the data. All right, I'm going to do dm-2. I'm going to change the output to a dm-2 folder just for the purpose of this video. All right, we're going to now run this command. All right, so we're going to come over here. We're going to go into our bin folder. We're going to type into the command line or the address bar cmd to run the command line. That's going to open the command. We're going to right click the command that we copied. That pastes it in. We're going to press enter. That now will read the config file. It's finished reading it. Now it's going to go through and it's going to create all of those notes. Here we go. It's now writing those files, spitting them out, and done. All right, now if we go back to our 5e tools -bin folder, we should now see a dm-2 folder. It's in our mechanics folder that we suggested. It's in our CLI folder like we requested. And we can come in here and we can see all of these things have now been created. To confirm that we've got everything, we can have a look at the backgrounds. All right, because it's only going to have, I think, the Acolyte. If you're in the SRD, we can see now that we've got a lot more options. All right, so what do? I copy these folders, I open up my Vault, and I paste them into my CLI folder. All right, you do this in the background in Windows Explorer. All right, so let's just do it just for the sake of it. Come here, right click on my folder that I've created, show in System Explorer, and I can paste the notes that I've just created through my CLI process, these ones here, into this folder here. All right, now I would turn off Obsidian when I'm doing this, and then I would restart Obsidian once I'm finished the copy process. It will then re-index all of those notes inside of my Obsidian folder, and it will go through the process of just basically making sure Obsidian knows that they're there, and then you should be able to start browsing them, and off you go. So there we go. We've just created our first configuration file. As you can see, it's nice and easy. We can use the CLI website to get examples. We can copy paste them in, and we're pretty much up and running very quickly. But let's have a look at some of the more advanced options we can actually jump in and use with this tool. Okay, so we have a basic template. We can include sources and we can change the output folders somewhere the CLI stuff is all stored. But what else can we do? If we head back to the actual Ubilant website, TTRPG-convert-CLI, all right, we go down into the README. All right, we will come along that bit that we just copied, which was how to create a basic config file. No, where was it? There it is, a basic config file. That's the one we copied before and we've modified to meet our own personal needs. If we go a bit further though, where did I do this? Here. So we go a bit further. For additional information on configuration, see the configuration page. Let's click on that and have a look. In here is a more detailed tutorial on what the CLI configuration can do. All right, and I highly recommend you guys read this from start to finish and have a look. Of interest in here is a much more advanced version of a configuration file. All right, you can see it's got the from section just like we had before. You can see it's got the paths just like we had before. There is, however, now some options for excluding. Now excluding, I'm not going to go through in this video because I haven't found a real need for it yet, but let's say that on D&D Beyond you went and purchased some options, like just some specific options from them like they do. Excluding and including allows you to include the options that you have purchased and exclude the options that you have not purchased. I've also found that it's beneficial if you find that there's an error in something, you can exclude something that's causing an error so you don't have to worry about it and you can manually fix that up later. But we won't go into that in this into detail in that. What we're going to look at though is the full source and the books down here. All right, I want to copy this into my Vault, into my config file so that I can use it for myself. So if we have a look here, what we're looking for, the full source section says these are the full sources that we're going to include in our config file. And if you look closely, you'll see there's a pattern, right? There's a command, all right, and then there's the options for the command file. All right, in this case here, there's the command, full source, and then the options are included in curly brackets. So we have to go from the leading curly bracket to the closing curly bracket, all right, and copy everything from there, plus the command. All right, so if we copy that whole section there, copy it, we go back to our configuration file, and we need to figure out where to put it in. Now, all of the config file needs to be wrapped inside of curly brackets. So you can see there's a leading and a closing. So if we were to stick this code down here, that would not work. All right, it needs to be contained within those two objects there. So this here is a section that is already obviously existing. And we can see here there's the command and the options. So we need to inject our code after that point. All right, so we paste there. I personally like to make sure that I come through and have everything on the same line because of my OCD and just a desire to make things pretty. It's worth noting that this is actually not required, but hey, I just like it to look nice. All right, now, so we've pasted that code in there, all right? But note here, there's a comma after each section, right? So after a command, there's a comma to say I'm finished with this one. If we have a look here, we don't have one. So we do need to put a comma just to make sure that that command is completed. And it tells the CLI tool that I'm ready for the next command, all right? So which is here. Keeping in mind, you don't need one on the end. If you stuck one on the last command, there would be an error. Okay, so we've pasted in a little bit of code that says these are the sources of the adventures and the books we want to include. We can see here that it's got some options, and you might not be familiar with them. All right, you need to go back through the data folder and go into the adventures and the books folders and have a look at what's in there. And obviously find the source numbers or the source abbreviations and names for the things you want to use and include them in here. I don't own locks though, so I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to bring that back to LMOP. All right, LMNOP is the Lost Mines of Found Elva. I want that adventure, so I'm going to include that here. What I did note though is you need to also include that up here for that to work. All right, I didn't have that before, and I did find that that did not give me the whole adventure. In terms of the books, yes, I just want to keep these options that I've used previously. So this one here actually has an example of how you can use a full path to a actual JSON file, and that is an option. I'm just going to replace these though with a simplified version, which is basically just the acronyms for the content that I would like. So in this case here, player handbook, DMG, monster manual. All right, I stick them into the book section, and that's going to give me copies of those books. All right, so just to quickly summarize that, if you want an adventure, make sure you stick it up here and in here. If you want a book, I would recommend you stick it up here and in here. And that way you get a copy of both. All right, so we're going to save that change now. All right, we're going to go to our CLI command. Bring that over onto this screen because I moved it. There we go. All right, so we've got our command, and we're just going to basically copy this and obviously run the command. Now, you notice I don't need to update this command now, right? I've updated the config file, which this file here is pointing to. I don't actually need to update the command line now as a result of doing this, which is, you know, why it's really cool. So if we go back to our, everything has reset. Go back to our CLI folder. We're going into our bin folder. We're going to click the command line and type CMD. That's going to open up the command. We're going to right click that command line that we copied before and press enter. I'm actually just going to change this. Do I want to do that? No, that's all right. DM5 can work. I've been doing some testing. Can you tell? All right, so in case you didn't follow that, sorry, while it's doing this, I was just changing the output so I get a fresh new folder. That's all I've been doing. It's just doing some testing, putting it into a new folder so I can see the changes are reflected. All right, that's finished writing that now. We can now go and have a look at our DM5 folder, because as you can see, that testing. Mechanics, CLI, all right, and if we have a look in here, we can now find an adventures folder. All right, now I just want to call this out because I found this before and it kind of threw me. Note that I don't have Rise of Tiamat in my adventure section. I do have it up here. I'm not sure why it's doing this. I'm not sure if it's working as intended or a bug, but it seems that by having ROT up here, but also at the time having an adventure defined here, it seems to bring in Rise of Tiamat as well. So I'm not sure if that's how that's meant to work, but heads up, I found that. I did find though that if you put Lost Mines of Phandelver here, for example, but don't have it up here, then the adventure won't be created. Okay, so stick them in both and you should be safe. Obviously for your books, that doesn't seem to be a problem. If we go back to the CLI folder and have a look in books, we can see the 3 folders for those books, and inside that you can see the note per chapter. All right, so there we go. We've basically now created a more advanced config file. All right, we've got the options to include different sources. We've got the options to include adventures. We've got the options to include books, and we know how to define a custom path for where we'd like these all things to go. You now know where the README file for the CLI tool is, and you know that there are options there that are a bit more advanced as well that go into exclusion and inclusion of notes, and you can certainly go into those depths if you want. But you should be more than capable now of using this tool in a really sort of strong way to get the notes that you need. Now, this isn't the end of this series. We're going to do another video from here on how to create templates. I'm not going to cover that in this video because it is quite a robust topic and this video is already getting relatively long. So we're going to basically do that in a separate video and give it the time that it needs. So we can show you how to change templates, what they do, and how you can modify them as well. All right, so there you go. You've learned how to use the CLI tool. You've learned how to create a config file at this point. You should be off on your way with lots and lots of content. A reminder, this does work for PF2E as well, although not as polished as the 5e version at this time. All right, let's jump out of it. I just want to say a huge and massive shout out to all of my patrons. A massive welcome to the new guys that have joined up this week. There's been quite a few of you. I have released my Patreon vault now, which is basically a foundation vault. That's got all of the folders and notes, templates, plugins, everything sort of like set up as a foundation for you to begin using Obsidian on your own. It doesn't teach you everything and it doesn't contain any content, right? It's just designed as a foundation for you to build upon. And some people are finding that really quite useful to see how all of the plugins sort of come together and work in a cohesive way. So yeah, huge, massive shout out. Thanks to everyone who has joined. If you would like access to that vault, my Patreon can be found over on Obsidian TTRPGtutorials.com. All right, so we'll jump back here. So from this page, if you need tutorials, this is where I host my content. All my tutorials are available for everyone for free. But if you would like a copy of the Patreon vault, you can jump into community and support, and you can find a link to my Patreon down here. Also, a really good reminder that the Obsidian TTRPG community Discord is where most of us hang. If you need help with something TTRPG specific for Obsidian, this is the place you will find us. We have the plugin developers like Jubilant is there, Javelin is there. Like, we've got some fantastic resources. We even have a member of the Obsidian dev team now with us. So Sigrunxia, I don't know if I said that right, probably not, but congratulations, it's fantastic. Now, if you need help with generic Obsidian stuff, Obsidian official Discord server is the place to be. If you need help with data view, if you need help with templater, like things that are not TTRPG specific, the Obsidian official Discord server has got a lot more people. Like, the TTRPG community is just a fraction of the massive pool of Obsidian users. So, jump in there and there's all sorts of things you can learn. All right, outside of that, huge, massive thanks to everyone again. If you do enjoy my content, please do like and subscribe. And outside of that, I will speak to you on the socials. Have a great day.